US prosecutors have recommended to the Justice Department that criminal charges be brought against the airline manufacturer Boeing for violating a settlement related to 2 fatal crashes. A final decision will be made next month. Earlier this year, the department found Boeing had violated an agreement shielding it from a fraud charge. It said it might prosecute the company over the crashes of its 737 MAX aircraft in 2018 and 2019. Boeing has declined to comment.
Hey everybody, welcome to Studio 64. My name's David. I've been searching the interzones for some more science, space and tech news to share with you. And I came across this over at RT.com. This should be interesting. Boeing faces possible criminal indictment, according to Reuters. Interesting. US prosecutors have reportedly recommended that the aircraft maker be charged for failing to abide by terms of a fraud settlement. Interesting. Yes, relatives of airliner crash victims confront Boeing's CEO David Calhoun during a US Senate hearing last week in Washington, D.C. Yeah, I'd say he'd be under quite a bit of pressure. I know he's resigning, but I don't think he'll come up short of a penny when he leaves. Funny how that works, isn't it? The US Department of Justice, the DOJ, is reportedly considering a criminal indictment of aerospace giant Boeing for allegedly violating the terms of a 2021 settlement that shielded the company from charges over airline crashes that killed 346 people. Now, the prosecutors have recommended to senior DOJ officials that charges be filed against Boeing. Reuters reported on Sunday, citing unnamed people familiar with the department's deliberations. A decision on whether to prosecute the company is due by July the 7th. Yeah, really interesting, isn't it? Interesting indeed. Absolutely, Again, it's just literally maintenance, lack of quality control. That's all it comes down to. Trying to, I would say it's, trying to cut corners by the sounds of it. Again, all alleged at this point. The DOJ claimed in a court filing last month that Boeing had breached a 2021 agreement over allegations that the company defrauded federal aviation authorities in connection with the fatal 737 MAX airliner crashes in 2018 and 2019. Now, under the settlement, the aircraft maker avoided prosecution by agreeing to pay a $2.5 billion fine and implement new compliance and ethics practices to prevent violations of US fraud laws. Yes, Boeing responded by arguing that it had honoured the terms of the 2021 agreement. However, the company has suffered a spate of safety incidents in recent months, including an in-flight blowout of a door on a 737 MAX 9 operated by Alaska Airlines. Yes, the Alaska scare occurred just 2 days before the Department of Justice settlement was scheduled to expire. Yes, the airline gods weren't too subtle there, were they? Prosecutors had previously agreed to seek formal dismissal of the deferred fraud charge as long as Boeing complied with the deal's terms over a 3-year period. Now, as usual, I'll leave the link to the main article below the video, so you can pop in, check out stories like hundreds of Boeing's risk of mid-air explosion, and these little embedded links here that you can go for a bit of a deeper dive if you want beyond the main article. Makes for an interesting read. Now, apart from the legal compliance issues, Boeing has reportedly failed a federal safety audit of its manufacturing processes in the wake of the mid-air door blowout. The New York Times reported in March that Federal Aviation Administration FAA investigators found dozens of quality control shortcomings, including the use of dish soap and a hotel key card as makeshift tools. Dear Lord, that's unbelievable. The FAA also launched a probe of possible falsification of inspection records at a Boeing factory in South Carolina. Now, we have a little video here, give us a bit more background, a bit more context if you like. We'll check it out, and then we'll carry on the conversation when we come out the other side.
US prosecutors have recommended to the Justice Department that criminal charges be brought against the airline manufacturer Boeing for violating a settlement related to 2 fatal crashes. A final decision will be made next month. Earlier this year, the department found Boeing had violated an agreement shielding it from a fraud charge. It said it might prosecute the company over the crashes of its 737 MAX aircraft in 2018 and 2019. Boeing has declined to comment. Last week, relatives of the victims urged prosecutors to seek a fine against Boeing of $25 billion and to pursue a criminal prosecution. Let's get more from our Asia business reporter, Suranjana Tiwari. Welcome to you. So explain what's happening here.
Yeah, these potential charges are related to two crashes of the Boeing 737 MAX, which killed 346 people, one in Indonesia in 2018 and another in 2019. Now, under a deal struck in 2021, the US Justice Department agreed not to prosecute Boeing over allegations that it defrauded the Federal Aviation Administration if the company overhauled its compliance practices and submitted regular reports. Boeing also agreed to pay $2.5 billion to settle the investigation. Earlier this year, the Justice Department found that Boeing had violated that agreement. Now, prosecutors have recommended the Justice Department bring criminal charges against Boeing for the breach. The DOJ, as you mentioned, has until July the 7th to make a final decision. Boeing has declined to comment, although it previously said it had honoured the terms of the settlement. Now, criminal charges would certainly deepen an unfolding crisis at Boeing. It is under scrutiny over a number of incidents. Investigators are still trying to get to the bottom of what happened when a panel blew off one of its jets operated by Alaska Airlines mid-flight in January. There are a number of other cases and whistleblower complaints about substandard manufacturing and shortcomings over safety. Ultimately, this is not good news for the company, not only because of safety concerns, but also the impact on the brand. And the company will be looking even further down the road. And if charged and found guilty, whether it can afford financial penalties and the business restrictions involved. Just last week, relatives of the victims of those two fatal crashes called for a fine of $25 billion on Boeing, as well as criminal prosecution.
Suranjana in Singapore, thank you for updating us on that story.
Well, that was entertaining, wasn't it? Yeah. Dear, oh dear. I don't know what's going on. As I said, we have a fair idea of what's going on with Boeing, but they've got a lot of making up to do to get people's confidence back, I can tell you that. No final decision has been made by the DOJ on indicting Boeing, and internal discussions remain ongoing, Reuters said. Yeah. So, but meanwhile, what's happening? Meanwhile, planes are still falling out of the sky and, you know, Boeing's Starliner can't get back from the ISS. Potential charges could go beyond the scope of the 2021 fraud settlement. One of the sources said other options include extending the earlier settlement agreement or imposing stricter compliance terms on Boeing. Interesting. Interesting indeed. And what's interesting is, are there any criminal charges against the people responsible, or is it just going to be a fine for Boeing? Interesting. While the manufacturer might accept having an outside compliance monitor or paying a financial penalty, facing criminal charges or being forced to enter a guilty plea could be too damaging to its business, Reuters said. Now, Boeing is a major defence contractor and its government revenue might be jeopardised by a criminal conviction. Now, relatives of 737 MAX crash victims urged the DOJ last week to move forward with criminal prosecution and seek a $24.8 billion fine against the company. Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting indeed. As I say, it's of a major concern because I noticed we hear about their space flight issues, we hear about their domestic airline issues. Do we hear about any issues for their defence contracting? Is that where they're putting all the quality control? Interesting, isn't it? Absolutely fascinating. All right, well, my name is David. Thanks for joining me for another Studio 64 Science, Space and Tech News update. I shall see you in the next one. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate if you're up for it. Drop a comment down below the video because I'd love to hear what you think. All right, take care. And as I always say, if you can't be good at it. And as I also always say...
Oh, ma'am, you really shouldn't teleport when you're pregnant. I'm afraid your only choice is air travel.
If you are seated in an exit row, please hold the door shut for the duration of the flight.
Oi! Can I get a pillow for my head?
Suicide pills, Mohawk gel, 20-year-old business week, turkey and brie wrap.
Do you have any dog food left? Oh, could I have the whole can?